Think boxing is the sweet science? Think again. From plaster filled gloves turning fists into weapons to mob controlled phantom punches, the ring has seen some seriously shady business. Today, we're breaking down the most notorious rigged fights that shocked the boxing world and changed the sport forever. Let's dive into the dark side of boxing. Number 7, Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas, February 11th, 1990. The biggest upset in boxing history might not have been what it seemed. Iron Mike was a 42-1 favorite against Douglas, who was considered an underdog with close to no chance of winning. But here's where it gets interesting. Some believe the financial stakes were just too perfect. Buster was dealing with personal tragedy. His mother had recently died, and he was emotionally devastated. Yet suddenly, he comes out swinging like a madman possessed. The financial stakes were enormous. Not only would a dramatic upset generate significant revenue from betting, but it could potentially set up rematch possibilities for further gains and increase public interest. What's really suspicious is how the fight played out. Tyson looked sluggish, almost disinterested. In round 8, Douglas got caught with a vicious uppercut that should have ended anyone, but the count was controversially slow. Then, in round 10, Douglas drops Tyson with a combination that, while solid, didn't look like it had knockout power against the most feared heavyweight on earth. Even Tyson himself has hinted at corruption in his career. The timing was perfect. Don King needed fresh storylines, HBO needed ratings, and Japanese television paid massive money for the rights. Sometimes the stars align a little too perfectly. Number 6, Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon, September 7th, 1996. This one's almost comedic if it wasn't so blatant. Tyson floored Seldon twice within 109 seconds of the first round, with punches that appeared to miss or barely connect. We're talking about punches that wouldn't knock over a feather, yet Seldon went down like he'd been hit by a freight train. Bruce Seldon had exactly 8 knockouts in 19 professional wins. He wasn't some glass-jawed fighter, but against Tyson, he was acting like he got shot by a sniper every time Iron Mike threw a jab in his general direction. The fight's timing further stoked suspicions. It took place shortly before the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur, who attended the bout. The whole event felt orchestrated. Tyson needed a quick, spectacular comeback after prison. Seldon needed a massive payday, and everyone knew a real fight would probably end the same way anyway. The second knockdown is particularly embarrassing. Seldon goes down from what can generously be called a phantom punch. Even the crowd was booing. It looked like bad theater, and that's probably exactly what it was. Before we move on to the next one on the list, if you're enjoying this content so far, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. Number 5, Jack Johnson versus Stanley Ketell, October 16th, 1909. Welcome to boxing's first major choreographed disaster. Johnson and Ketell could count on significant revenue from film proceeds by extending the fight beyond a handful of rounds. This was the era when boxing matches were filmed for movie theaters, and longer fights meant more money for everyone. The plan was simple. They set up a script for their fight to stretch it to 20 rounds, as a 20-round fight would guarantee boxing fans would pay to go to local theaters to watch the replay of the fight. Johnson, the much larger heavyweight champion, would carry the smaller middleweight Ketell for the full distance. But Ketell had other plans. In 12 rounds, Ketell swung a surprise punch that knocked Johnson down. Johnson later claimed he exaggerated the fall, but witnesses say he was genuinely stunned. The heavyweight champion was not happy about being double-crossed. What happened next was pure fury. Johnson got up and unleashed hell, knocking Ketell unconscious with such force that several teeth were embedded in Johnson's glove. "I can never remember hitting a man harder," Johnson would later recall. The script went out the window, and Ketell paid the price for his betrayal. Number 4, Don King's U.S. Championship Tournament, 1977. Don King didn't just promote fights, he manufactured them. The controversial tournament became toxic when one of the tournament fighters informed the media that the tournament was rigged for those who had contractual ties to King. He'd go on to explain that he was told he'd lost his next fight before arriving to the venue. This wasn't just one rigged fight, this was an entire tournament built on lies. King allegedly paid the Ring magazine, an authority on boxing at the time, to falsify the track records and rankings of tournament participants. Fighters had fake records, imaginary wins, and padded statistics, all to make King's stable look legitimate. The whole house of cards came crashing down when fighters started talking. More boxers would come forward with allegations of payoffs, leading ABC to cancel the tournament. CBS even ran an expose that destroyed King's reputation and showed how deep the corruption went. What makes this even more outrageous? King barely faced consequences. The man had turned professional boxing into a puppet show, and he kept promoting fights for decades afterward. The tournament scandal helped create the modern sanctioning body system we see today. Ironically, it gave the WBC and WBA more power because the Ring magazine lost all credibility. Number 3. Muhammad Ali vs. Sonny Liston II, May 25, 1965. The Phantom Punch. 2 words that still make boxing fans argue 60 years later. The fight ended in the first round with what has been famously dubbed the Phantom Punch, a seemingly light blow from Ali that sent Liston straight to the canvas. But here's the thing. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw a punch that should have dropped the intimidating Sonny Liston. The circumstances were shady from the start. The bout took place in a small venue in Lewiston, Maine, far from the major boxing hubs. The location choice and the chaotic atmosphere, including the confusion over whether the fight had actually ended, added to the sense of something being amiss. Liston had serious mob connections, and many believe the fix was in before the fighters even entered the ring. His later admission that he feared for his life if he won the fight further fueled the rigging rumors. Think about it. Sonny Liston, one of the most feared men in boxing, was scared of what would happen if he won. The chaos afterward was pure theater. The referee was confused, the timekeeper didn't know what was happening, and photographer Neil Leifer captured the iconic shot of Ali standing over Liston yelling, "Get up and fight." Even Ali looked surprised that Liston stayed down. Number 2. Jake Lamada vs. Billy Fox, November 14, 1947. Sometimes fighters admit to the crime. Lamada later admitted in his autobiography that he intentionally lost the fight in exchange for a promised title shot. This wasn't speculation, this was a confession from the Raging Bull himself. The mob controlled boxing in the 40s, and Lamada was given a choice: take a dive or never get a title shot. If Lamada chose to stand up against the mob, most likely they would have ended his career. So Lamada did what he had to do. He became an actor for one night. Fox then became the first fighter to ever stop Lamada when a helpless-looking Bronx Bull was rescued by the referee in round 4, the crowd loudly booing the obvious setup. It was so blatant that fans in Madison Square Garden were booing from the opening bell. The aftermath was swift and harsh. The result led to the immediate suspension of Lamada's boxing license and widespread speculation about corruption in boxing. And here's the crazy part. The mob kept their word. Lamada got his title shot and became middleweight champion. Sometimes crime actually does pay, at least temporarily. Number 1. Luis Resto vs. Billy Collins Jr., June 16, 1983. This isn't just the most rigged fight in boxing history, it's the most disturbing. What happened that night at Madison Square Garden was nothing short of assault with a deadly weapon disguised as a boxing match. Resto's cornermen had illegally altered Resto's gloves by removing the padding and soaking his hand wraps in plaster of Paris. Think about that for a second. Worse than bare knuckles, it was plaster. Resto was literally hitting Collins with rocks for 10 straight rounds. Billy Collins Jr. was 14-0, a rising star from Tennessee who was expected to become a world champion. He was undefeated before his career was cut short after his final fight when he sustained serious injuries against Luis Resto. What Collins didn't know was that he was walking into a trap. The fight was brutal from the start. During the bout, Collins told his father and trainer, Billy Collins Sr., that something just wasn't right with Resto's gloves. Billy told his father it was like he was getting hit with rocks. Now we know he really was getting hit with rocks. After the fight, Collins Sr. discovered the truth during the post-fight handshake. When Sr. went to shake Resto's hand, he discovered that Resto's gloves felt thinner than normal. Screaming that he thought the gloves had no padding, Collins Sr. demanded that the New York State Athletic Commission impound the gloves. The investigation revealed the horrifying details. Someone had removed an ounce of padding from each of his gloves, then filled them with chalk. But that wasn't even the worst part. In 2007, Resto apologized to Collins' widow, Andrea Collins Nile, who attempted to sue the state of New York for not protecting her late husband. Resto also told Collins Nile that in addition to removing padding from the gloves, he soaked his hand wraps in plaster of Paris. The consequences were devastating. Collins suffered a torn iris and permanently blurred vision, ending his career. The young fighter fell into a deep depression and started drinking heavily. He died only months later when he drove his car into a culvert while intoxicated. Some commentators have speculated that the loss of his livelihood drove him into a downward spiral. Justice was eventually served. In 1986, Lewis and Resto were both put on trial and found guilty of assault, criminal possession of a weapon, Resto's gloves, and conspiracy. Both men served prison time, but no amount of justice could bring back Billy Collins Jr. This wasn't just a rigged fight, it was premeditated assault that destroyed a young man's career and possibly led to his death. It remains the darkest moment in boxing history and a reminder of how low the sport can sink when greed overrides humanity. These 7 fights show us that boxing's reputation for corruption isn't just urban legend, it's documented history. From plaster filled gloves to mob controlled outcomes, the sweet science has had some seriously sour moments. The good news? Modern boxing has much stricter oversight, better testing, and more transparency than ever before. But let's be real, where there's big money, there's always temptation. The key is staying vigilant and supporting the fighters who put their lives on the line for our entertainment. These stories remind us why clean competition matters and why we should never take the integrity of the sport for granted. What do you think? Are there other suspicious fights we should have covered? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more boxing deep dives like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got plenty more boxing mysteries to uncover, and trust me, the rabbit hole goes even deeper. Until next time, keep your guard up and your skepticism higher.